right, cool. Well, we're just gonna get into the organic conversation. So the reason why I wanted to do this, because it's Black History Month. We seeing everything come out, right? All of a sudden, black people are hot again. This is our time of the month where all the organizations come in. Now that I have a podcast too, like I've been having several talks with different organizations, and I remember having a conversation with one org, and they're like, oh yeah, we want to, blacks have made some incredible achievements, and we want to really highlight this. And how can we highlight some of the achievements, from that's been erased from history or hasn't been, has its just dues? And I was like, although I don't know, I was sitting in the meeting and everything was about the past, right? And I felt some kind of way, and I didn't know if I should be feeling something. Although I do think we should highlight the past, I also wanted to have a conversation about what about the black people making history now, right? Like, how can we honor the past and also really dive into there's some dope brothers, there's some dope sisters, there's some dope black people making history right now in the making. How do we support those initiatives too, instead of going all the way back to the past all the time? How can we mix both of those? So I don't know. That's kind of the conversation geared to Black History Month. What is it that we see it is now in your different perspectives in the spaces? And I'm gonna start with Jordan Harrison because I know you gotta jump off. But what do you see? Let's start with the now. What do we see now? What's the Black history experience like when you look at it now in today's society? What does it look like to you?
Can I defer to Ronald or Mike to start off? I would defer for a quick sec. I gotta think about that one. I gotta think for a second.
Mike Love or Ronald, go ahead, kick us off.
I'll jump in. I can absolutely see what and understand what you mean by that. A lot of what it is the past. I mean, I'm in education at this point. My current position is a community college counselor. So a lot of the celebration, a lot of the individuals that I see celebrated is a lot of the individuals that they bring out every year. The Martin Luther King, it's the Rosa Parks, it's the Jackie Robertson as well. So I can absolutely see that reach towards the past, and then understanding that there's a lot of current Black brothers, Black sisters who are doing amazing things. So I can absolutely understand that. I feel like in some aspects it's having to reteach certain things. And my perspective is we in the age of time where, you have everything at your fingertips when it comes to information, be it your cell phone. So having to re-educate individuals every year around this time it gets tiring. It gets tiring. I love the energy. I love the appreciation for some, but in different aspects, it's not genuine. So being in different spaces and around this time and seeing posts or seeing backgrounds from individuals now that we're on Zoom celebrating Black culture is awesome. But my whole thing is I'm wearing this, Black every month because that's my energy. So to some, it's just, I'm just going to highlight this right now. And then the remaining 11 months in the year, it's yeah, we don't really rock with you like that. So that's saying keep the energy the same. I'm absolutely understanding and feeling that to a different point now. So that'll be what I'm seeing currently in Black history as far as what pops off in this month. But the energy, the focus towards the Black creative spaces is definitely needed. And I love that. And I love that energy. So I definitely want to see more of that.
I love that.
With my being in the classroom and teaching 9th and 10th grade Africana studies in an all Black male high school, my thing is that if I am going to be in the past, present some of the positive stuff from the past. I think that we get so suckered into focusing on our trauma and focusing on the negative things that occur with us that we forget some of the excellence that was still being able to be produced at the time. And so, though I agree with being able to focus on today as a means of dictating, what kind of history we look at, which I do make sure that I do in my classroom. one aspect that I had recognized with myself was that I had been also paying attention to our trauma and our pain because our kids don't learn that stuff. So what I've done is one of the things I've done the last 2 years is I've introduced my students to the Nicholas brothers, Cab Calloway, Dorothy Dandridge, like our performers and our entertainers of that time who were being in clubs that they normally wouldn't even be able to be even invited into. But because they were so talented, they couldn't be denied. And diving into that culture and diving into those moments and showing my kids stormy weather when the Nicholas brothers and Cab Calloway or, the Nicholas brothers jumping on tables and doing the splits and doing backflips and just being all the energy is so palpable. And our kids dive into that. And then we put the history behind those individuals, like how Dorothy Dandridge, dipped her toe into a hotel pool and they drained the whole pool because a black woman touched the water. So, but you initiated with the positive first instead of the trauma first. Our kids are already going through enough trauma on their own. Then for us to also be putting them through more trauma in the classroom. So that's how I've kind of changed my thing, is that if I am going to stay in the past, I want to go from a positive space and a positive connotation. But when it comes to today, just introducing them to new writers, new entertainers who are changing the world, new scientists and new, just the people that, like you guys, we all know, we see it every day. Just we're doing amazing things on a regular basis, and our kids have access to this information. It's just up to us to make sure that they're guided in the right way to be able to find that information.
Love it. Love it. So go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. I don't have much to add to what Mike and Ronald said. I just think history is just an interesting concept, right? Because I think you can look at it from 100 years ago, or you can look at it from yesterday of like what's being done right now. To your point, we were talking about like how do we talk about the things that have happened in the past and today? Like I think there are phenomenal Black folks doing things now. Like we have had some great days and some great achievements in the past, and those achievements are still being made today. And so how do we make sure that when we talk about Black history, yes, let's understand the history and the things and the environments and the context that we survived, endured, and were brilliant in, and acknowledging the history that's being made right now. One of the shirts it says like, see, like some of the young folks wearing it says like, I am Black history, right? And that reality is like every single day, Black folks around the world are making history. And so how do we make sure that it's just not a celebration of MLK, Rosa Parks, and these folks that we say, oh, this is so historical. It's like there are still struggles now that Black folks are addressing, battling in real ways that we can't just limit Black history to. And it's a both and, because I think it's honoring the past and acknowledging that we are going to be the history books that our children and grandchildren are going to read about. And there's work being done now that we need to make sure is lifted up is now as well.
So, Eric, I don't know if you heard most of the prompt, but it was more so of like we're reflecting on what is Black history as it is into the context of what you see it as today. And then also like, some of the conversation that you've seen that came up is, instead of just always going to the past, how can we, bring the history that's currently being made into the conversation? And then as Ronald, I think you were on when he was talking about the trauma, we tend to, sometimes the trauma gets more focused than the positive achievement. So what are your thoughts on, what do you see right now when we're in this Black History Month of what's happening in the narratives that you see in your spaces that you're in?
Okay, yeah, for sure. That's a good question. I think the first thing is like Black history is an opportunity to uncover everything that's been hidden from me. That's like the main thing. For Black history, I'm constantly focusing on like, all right, what is it, the thing that like white folks didn't want me to learn, and let me try to gather and learn all of that. So I think it's an opportunity to kind of highlight and shine a light on those different things. And then the other thing, like, I kind of felt like there's this dichotomy between like history and, the current day, when in reality, like, I think we should be trying to bridge those things a little bit better and just recognize that this is actually like a Black tradition. I feel like when we talk about history, it's like this happened in the, 40s through 60s. Nothing happened between the 60s and 2000s. And then now we're at the current day, when in reality, like the things that were happening way back then are still happening now, and that's part of our Black tradition. And if we could like bridge those two things, I feel like it's far more like empowering, and we don't get necessarily caught up in the dichotomy or versus, history current day. So those are the two things that come to my mind when I think about Black history. And when I think of it as like a tradition, that's far more empowering to me, because it's like my people have always been doing this, throughout the history of the world. And I get to be part of that tradition, making history today. So that's just my thought on it.
So I also seen conversations going around about, hey, Black history, we only get this as the shortest month. I think T-Pain said something that people been talking about, why have Black History Month? Why can't we make it, just part of American history? We're part of the history, and then just integrate it into the history of American history, right? How do we feel about that? Like, I'm still sitting with it, so I'm not sure where I feel. So I'm probably gonna just pop out in different emotions throughout this conversation, but love to get your thoughts.
Please, please, please give me this one, because I get so frustrated when I hear people say, "Why do we have the shortest month?" Because they leave out the history of Black History Month and its creation, and how it originated as Black History Week due to Frederick Douglass's birthday. And I actually posted about it a few days ago, and I actually had people on my friends list who did not know that was the case. And so I was glad to be able to provide that information, because it just goes into this negative narrative of, oh, they gave us. And I'm like, no, they didn't give us nothing. It started off as a week for a particular purpose, and it just so happened to be in the month of February. The commentary around making history a part of the whole year, that's not a Black problem. We do history all year, all the time. It's a mainstream problem. So when people say, oh, we need to be doing it all year, no, you're asking for white folks to be doing it all year. The rest of us do. Like Mike's hoodie says, black every month. So it's always fascinating to me the jargon that's used and the word choices that are used, because a lot of times it's the asking of those outside of our community and their acceptance of us, instead of it being a recognizing of the traditions like Eric spoke of. Like, we're Black all the time. We're Black 365 days of the year. Y'all just happen to join in on the celebration for 1 month. So ask yourselves, how can you start to include Black history, because it is American history, in your everyday life? Because you're already using our inventions. You wouldn't even be able to go about your day without our inventions. We'd have car accidents every day without us. We wouldn't have cell phones every day without us. Like, you couldn't survive without our existence and our intelligence and our intellect and our creativity. And we see it every day. When you're talking about modern day history, all the young people, all the content creators on these TikToks and stuff, like it's phenomenal, the trends that they're creating, while simultaneously continuing with a capitalistic society where white folks are the ones making money off of it while we're doing all the creating. So there's so many aspects to it that people contextually miss, because Black History Month is for the rest of everybody. The rest of those of us who are truly indoctrinated into what we do on a regular basis, the month is just an enhancement, not the only time that we're interacting in this space.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Love that. Oh no, I was looking around. I see Mike Love. He had that look like, all right, let me see how I'm gonna go in on this.
I was feeling that. And I feel it may be a little different because I see quite a few of us work in education spaces where Black history is celebrated, at least in that month. And the idea that, especially in the context of the new, like ethnic studies requirements. So there are more Black courses being taught, a variety of courses. So have the ability to learn more. I think that'd be, if I'm looking at it from a perspective of not being in education and understanding how that's different, how different companies, individuals experience Black history, definitely different. I do think that in education, I have the ability to look at it differently because I see a lot more. I have the ability to affect the students that I teach and counsel as well. So when they come to my office or when they're in their class, they're seeing that. If you're not in education, then it'd be interesting to see how that's experienced from a whole. I do understand it and can feel exactly what Ronald was saying. This is it was always seen that way. It's not for us, it's for everyone else because we're experiencing this every day. It'd be the conversation on what would it be like to have this more intertwined with American history or more mainstream. Yeah, I feel like we probably already know how that would go over. I just don't see it. There'd be too much of a highlight and a change of power for that to happen. Like, what if it wasn't just this month? What if it was Black History Week and we had a Black History Week every month of the 12? We don't want to continue to hear this. We don't, seeing how, even in education, how individuals, the fight for the ethnic studies courses and not wanting to have certain pockets of history revealed in that way. So some parts I feel like we can do better. Some parts I feel like in that specific question is not a question of, for us, it's not a Black question. That's a more mainstream. How can we incorporate Black creativeness, Black appreciation into every single month and not just in February? I don't know if enough of them are having that conversation.
Well, I kind of see it trying to happen, I guess, with, new diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, with and it's not necessarily history, but just incorporating Black organizations, creatives, and so forth, from what Target has done to their campaign of getting more Black products into the stores, on and then you guys could tell me your thoughts about all the stuff that I'm talking about as well, from Netflix, having the Black creatives come on and then highlighting all those different shows. And I think I shared it with you guys too. ABC even did a special, although I was kind of, I don't know, I felt some kind of way about the special that they did on Malcolm X, and then seeing how all those families' lives were destroyed, and nobody's going to talk about how next steps to how we fix what all these things that y'all done broke. We're just going to just leave it there, like, oh yeah, we're going to exonerate, but I'm gonna digress from that. But anyways, we see a glimpse of what it could possibly look like, right? So how do we keep engaging that conversation to push the envelope further to integrate that into mainstream society, and businesses, corporations, institutions? How do we start to keep that narrative going? Or do we not? Or do we disagree with what I'm saying? Maybe we think that it's not happening, and you think something else be happening. Feel free to disagree with me as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll add on, and I think it's complicated, and I'll give like two cautions, and then what I think we should be thinking about as we try to like fully integrate or whatever the case is. But the first one being like, if we were to genuinely integrate Black history into like our American institutions, it's going to challenge everything that those institutions stand on. Like if you were to fully integrate like W. Du Bois, Ella Baker, all these other people that we've been talking about, it's going to be a challenge to those white institutions. And I think that's part of the reason why we're not seeing that, genuine embeddedness of Black culture, Black history into our schools and stuff, and like I was just reading yesterday that there are 37 states, that currently have legislation in their legislature to ban critical race theory, to ban books by Black authors, and so on. So I think it's easy to like pick and choose history that, mainstream America wants to highlight. It's far more difficult to like embed it into the institution because it's going to act as like a contradiction, I think. And it's going to awaken people to what this, society has done to Black people. So that's my first thought. In terms of some of the examples that you provided, I actually think there's like an interesting dilemma because, like, quite honestly, I think all of those things are really centered around profit for the industries that you mentioned, right? Like, if Target didn't think that there was a market that they could exploit, I don't think that they would be highlighting Black artists, right? But they know that they're like, yo, like, Black people love buying Black clothes. So how can we start to, get access to that market and make money? And the reason that's top of mind is my mom, she always buys me the Target Black History things. And actually, they dope. I like them. But, I was walking to get a smoothie the other day, and I had 3 Black people stop me and say, yo, where'd you get that? Like, I love buying Black clothes. I can't ever find anything. I'm like, oh, I got it from Target. And I'm like, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go get that right now. And I'm like, damn, I know Target's making a whole lot of money off this, So, and even with Netflix, like, I think that they're doing all this Black content, not out of the goodness out of their heart, but that they know that they could make a good amount of money off it. Now, the other thing I will say is that, like, I think that we're benefiting from the exposure to that at times, right? Like, I just got done watching this little clip that that like Rotten Tomatoes made of all the Black superhero movies and shows. And, they were just highlighting them for Black History Month. And I felt empowered through that. They had Blade on there. They had Hancock, although Hancock's not necessarily the best example of a Black superhero. But, they had all these different Black superheroes and Miles Morales, the Spider-Man. And I was hyped, bro. I was like, I'm ready to get to work now. So I do think that, like, there is a potentially unintended consequence, of empowering Black people through this media, which, I've seen the videos of the Black kids, like, super excited through the seeing the Encanto video, right? And now they are growing up to be more empowered, and, that's a good thing. So, like, I guess it's just that balancing act of recognizing that they're doing this for economic reasons. And at the same time, like, some of our people are feeling empowered about that. And, just trying to work through the nuance and complexity of that, I think, is important.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly what Eric was saying, just about the profitability of it. I think especially right now in culture, saying Black Lives Matter as a company might help out your bottom line, because people be like, okay, this is like a socially just company, like it's the thing to do right now. Everyone hires a DI specialist, puts out a statement, and then, Terrell, are talking about run the receipts. Like, how are you investing in the Black community? What does your C-level suite look like? What does your board look like? Like, is there a real transfer of power or an expansion of it to include folks that have been historically and continue to be marginalized from those conversations? I think I'm also thinking about, it's almost like a celebration without consciousness, but you're conscious of your profits. And then I'm also thinking about, in education, almost the myth of multiculturalism, where I still think the definition of America or American is white, English-speaking, Christian, heterosexual. And until we can really challenge the cultural norm and understanding of what we deem as like American and broaden that out, I think these are moments that we can kind of challenge it. But it's interesting because to all the representation increase that we're seeing, we're also seeing a lot of backlash and folks being like, yo, this is it. Underneath it, they're saying this is not American. This is not America that we're supposed to see, And I think some of the work outside of Black History Month in this time is saying, how do we broaden out the capacity for us to expand, saying it's not just okay, we're all American, but what does it mean to celebrate the different identities and realities that people are living in, and saying that this too as American, James Baldwin called like I too am American. There's this constant plea from Black people saying, y'all brought us here. Like, we too are American. Like, how do we coexist in this space and have real access to things in meaningful and tangible ways? So I think, although I appreciate and am glad for all the initiatives, I also think it's a very interesting time in society, because we're seeing it in education where there's extreme backlash against some of the conversations, deeming it as un-American. I think there was one state that the governor set up a toll line or a call line for teachers or students to call in on teachers talking about ethnic studies and things like that. It kind of goes back to what Eric said in the beginning, where that Black history is like, what have people been trying to hide? And that reality is like, education is one of the places where we are really taught that there's one way that Americans should look, and anything outside of that might get a week, might get a month, but that's pretty much it. Because outside of that, we just need to get back to being American, whatever that means.
It's funny you say that, Jordan, because my vice principal was at a game recently, and it was a Chicago Bulls game, and they played the Black national anthem, and nobody stood up, and then except for him, and then they played the American national anthem, and everybody has the expectation of standing up. And so that's what you're getting at, is the whole notion of we're not indoctrinated into it. For one, majority of white people don't even know the song, and they might not have even heard it unless they went to a sporting event. Like, it's not part of who we are. And, we have the conversation every year about how they neutered Martin Luther King's legacy to this safe individual when Martin Luther King was a radical. And when they realized he was a radical, that's when they killed him. So it's fascinating how much they use our culture, they profit off of our culture, they take from our culture, yet we're still not part of theirs. And I think that's where all these conversations around ethnic studies and critical race theory and all this other stuff, all it is that, like what Eric said earlier, they're scared. They're scared of the realization that, yes, we are a part of this. Yes, we are a substantial part of this, and you're not going to get rid of us. And so instead of fighting it, just acknowledge it and allow it to happen. But there's so much arrogance behind white American. That's the only culture. Like, white America doesn't have culture. Their culture is stolen from everybody else's. The one culture they do have is being anti everybody else's culture. So it's just a fascinating dynamic to be a part of, especially within education spaces, because, politicians trying to tell me what I can and can't do in my classroom. You're gonna lost your mind. Unless you're gonna have an actual politician sit there and watch me teach every day, you're not gonna stop me from being Black. I'm gonna be Blacker. So
I love it. And to go back to something that Jordan alluded to, so something that I'm going to be campaigning a little bit later this year, for those who are listening, Run the Receipts is a campaign that my organization is going to do. So all those organizations that were claiming Black Lives Matter, at the height of George Floyd, it's been 2 years now. I want to see, what have you guys been doing? And if not, I'm connected to some dope educators who are here, dope creatives, dope community activists. Let's get you integrated into what you could do as far as sustainable things that you can build within education, community, whatever, to support the initiative that fits and is in alignment with your values. I want to see the receipts. Where the receipts at? That's what the Run the Receipts campaign is all about. Now, going to what Ronald Preston Clark was talking about. Let me dive back in. So we talked a little bit about the past. We're in discussions of the current. Just to flow into the conversation of the future. What do we think the future looks like when we look at Black History Month, or what we want to create around what was started with Black History Month? What does that look like? Because, even going back to what Eric was talking about, integrating this into society or American culture, of how that could disrupt systems. I think we all kind of know the system is broken. The system isn't made for us. So how do we integrate something new that works for everybody? I mean, that's the whole premise and culture of equity, diversity, inclusion is that by creating a space of belonging and including everyone, that you build something better, right? So if when I look at it, is that in order for us to build a better society where you could truly thrive and everybody's thrive, it doesn't have to be capitalistic where somebody has to suffer. Like, no, there's enough for everybody, right? At least to me, that's how I feel. But let me not put that words in everybody's mouth. What do we look at when we look at this going into the future? What do we wish? What do we hope? What are our dreams? What do we see as something that it could be built in as a vision for the future?
I want to see the continuation of the celebration. Uh, I think that having the focus on Black individuals, on Black creatives, on Black accomplishments. I want to see more of that. I think there's no way that we can grow and make this better if we don't further that. And I do believe that's monetary. I want to see as much of us get on as possible. So whatever that looks like in celebrating us and celebrating the Black accomplishments, going out and recycling that Black dollar. I want to see more of that because I know, in the 30 some odd years that I've been on Earth, that the other 11 months as a whole of individuals that don't look like us, that's not the highlight. People are not trying, the focus is not celebrating Black accomplishments and Black creatives in July. That's not the focus. It's not the focus in September. It's not the focus in December. So I want to see more of it. I'd be lying if and I know that Eric spoke on that as well. Like, it feels good, to see that celebration and be Black for this month. It feels good to be Black all year. But I'd be lying to say I didn't walk into work like it's real Black all month, and that's a great feeling because I feel like it's celebrating the best of us and not the worst of us, which is what's prominent the 11 months out of the rest of the year. So the way that I'm looking at it, what I would like to see in the future, I just want more. I want more of the celebration. I want more of the focus to be on us. I want to see more of us get on. I just want to see us celebrating that way.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it kind of simple, but I want political and economic power, bro. Like, one of the things that I forgot to add on earlier is that, like, I don't want, like, for there to be more DEI consultants or, but without, like, changing how decisions are made in companies, right? Because, like, I've been a part of 2 different organizations that did DEI trainings. And what happened is they came in, they evaluated that the culture was toxic within the workplace, and then they dipped. And now we were upset beforehand, and now we were even more pissed off because we know, like, we have the evidence that it's toxic, but not the changes that are required, and I feel like the solution to that has often been like, all right, well, we'll promote one Black person to leadership, right? And then we celebrate that they're the first Black woman in leadership or Black male in leadership. And then now that one individual is dealing with the toxicity at a level that nobody's ever experienced, right? Because they're like, now they're here, they're trying to make change, but it's difficult. So, like, I'm a big believer in that, like, how do we shift institutions so that even the people who are at, like, the bottom of the hierarchy are able to make decisions on how the company and organization is ran, especially because those are the people that typically have, like, the most experience and proximity to people on the ground. So, like, those are the types of things that I want to be seeing for Black history that we, advocate for, because not only does that shift the culture and institution, but it also shifts power and puts power back into people's hands. And then, like Mike was saying, like, yeah, like, economics is critical, all the corporations that are profiting off of Black Lives Matter, they should be redistributing some of those funds back into Black communities. And the critical piece is not in ways that they're going to profit off of. Okay. I remember reading, and I think some of us have talked about this before, but I pulled it up because the numbers are important. But there was about $50 billion donated for Black Lives Matter since Floyd's murder in 2020, that was. But 45 billion of those donations were either in loans or in some type of way that that company could profit off of. Okay? So like, that's not what's up. I want the type of investments that really support our community and doesn't just allow another opportunity for that corporation to make money off of. But that's exactly what we've been seeing. And as you know, Malcolm always challenged us to be politically mature. For us to just accept that 45 billion and not, really be able to do anything with it, or, to be for the profit of another corporation, that's not the politically mature thing to do. We should be fired up about that. And we should be working for the type of investments that, really work for us and that we have control and say over how it operates in our community. So that's that. I got fired up just because I read the article again and I remember how pissed off it made me the first time.
I resonate with you in that D&I space, and then I'm gonna let Jordan jump in here because as me being one of those leaders, the hoops and hurdles that I have to jump through sometimes, like, and my mental health is just like I can't stay in it and be my best self for long, and I always have to resonate with that. It's like, all right, I need to take another mental health day because like I got like. This is a marathon, not a sprint, right? But sometimes I find myself sprinting for no reason and not getting much further than what I started. So I appreciate you saying that. I felt every single word of that. Go ahead, Jordan, get in there.
Yeah. Well, first I want to correct myself. So I think last time I said that I too quote was by Baldwin. That's Langston Hughes. So I want to make sure I'm historically accurate in what I'm quoting. So check myself on that one. Second, I gotta make sure. I think I just reread Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and I think one of the quotes that stuck out with me was that true generosity consists in fighting to destroy the causes which nourish false charity. And I think as someone who works in a nonprofit, I come across a lot of instances and moments where on one hand you can give, kind of like what Eric's saying, you can give a lot of money to a cause, but you could still uphold the institutions and the systems that allow that cause to even need to exist. And so I think when I think about the future of Black history and I think about the work that adults are doing, I also think about the opportunity we have to educate young folks to have the better capacity to challenge these systems and to be leading them in real ways. And so for me, I think part of Black history is how do we expand the capacity to develop and to teach young folks in real, genuine ways that challenge some of the ways that systems operate so that they can imagine, that they can have dialogue, that they can disagree, and also figure out how do we kind of do it in a humane and with humanity. But understanding that I think in education, there's so many spaces that work needs to be done. Like I was just at a school the other day where the librarian had a sign on the library door that said, it was a picture of monkeys, and she said that the library is closed. Y'all are supposed to be evolved primates. And I was like, wow. The history of Black folks being called monkeys and different things, like just like these things are happening on our schools, a constant dehumanization of our students at younger age, like just all the different things that are kind of happening within there. And so I'm thinking, how do we really develop schools that can model what we want our overall society to look like, so that when you go into society, you're not having this like culture shock, or just you don't have to like, it's just like, you're just saying, hey, there's actually a way we can do this. It's humane. It honors kind of the differences and values the diversities. It challenges this Eurocentric singular way, this monolith of what American is. And it really develops the capacity for young folks to be society centered and using their gifts and talents to change the world and develop better humanity as a whole.
All right, Ronald Preston Clark, bring us home. Go ahead.
No, but I love the fact that each of us have spoken on a different dynamic, because it speaks to the complexity of the issue. The fact that we have each of these problems available to us. It's like the amount of work that's necessary to get us to a space where these conversations are not even occurring. Our ancestors were having these conversations. You know, Du Bois was having these conversations. Scarlett G. Woodson was having these conversations. Booker T. Washington was having these conversations. We've been having these conversations, and they're continuously conversations. And we get these little pieces of progress that we then hold on to until we realize that the progress wasn't really that far away. Like, it's like we took a step, cool. But you get these little grains of salt and not even recognizing just how deep the issue is. And so from an educator perspective, the fact that, you know, my honor sophomores know what intersectionality is now. Like, we've been in class discussing intersectionality, using Angela Davis's Women, Race, and Class in a 10th grade Africana Studies class. My kids now view things through an intersectional lens. So when Jordan mentioned, you know, what an American looks like, now my kids can understand, okay, those are all privileged intersections that this individual is executing. And what privileges do I have in this country? What privileges can I take advantage of? And then in what spaces can I further along the causes of those in the underprivileged intersections? And so it really does come down to our kids. And do we teach our kids enough about themselves to where they're empowered to be who they are? You know, the fact that I can tell. We were learning about status quo recently, and I told my kids, because I got students with, you know, locks and you know, various historically Afrocentric hairstyles, and I said, y'all are going against the status quo, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm like, what's the status quo haircut for, you know, a black man in America? And they were like, oh, fade, you know, waves, whatever it was, and I was like, yeah. I said, but why is that? And so we're having these deep, deep, powerful conversations with our young people to hopefully arm them with enough knowledge and security of who they are to be able to go into these spaces and battle these systems the way that Mike is battling the systems of the community college space, and Jordan is in nonprofit spaces, and Eric's in nonprofit spaces, and Jordan's in a PhD program. Lone black dude, Jordan?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Lone black dude. Yeah. Right? For the most part. When I was in my master's program, lone black guy. You know, Eric's about to go to Berkeley. We don't know what his setting is going to be like, but in a lot of our spaces, we got to represent. So we have to arm our young people to be able to be in those spaces and be confident in those spaces, to be able to hold their own in those spaces, not lose themselves in those spaces. And that's how we can infiltrate those spaces and then present a different version of the truth that a lot of our future colleagues and a lot of our future, you know, people that are going to be in the same spaces as us, they wouldn't have heard of if it wasn't for us being there. So I go back and forth with, you know, I work with all black males, but my dream job is going to an all white school and turning it upside down. Like, and giving white kids the truth, because telling black kids about being black isn't gonna lead to the change. The change needs to be in white children. Like, they're the ones, because they're just like how we're passing down stuff to the next generation. Guess what? Racist older white folk are passing down the same methodology down to their kids. And so it's going to be the same battle all the time. When you got high school white kids still doing the same racist stuff that their ancestors did.
Hey, Terrell, is it cool if I add something onto that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. And I'm going to back up after because I know I'm taking up a lot of space. But
no, I love it. This is what we're here for.
Yeah. Just to that point that Ronald was saying about like walking onto these campuses and being confident and prepared, I think that understanding the history is a critical piece of that. So, and I'll just speak for myself, but growing up, I was like actually pretty disconnected from like Black history, you know? I think that my people tried to raise me so that I kind of am like colorblind, and that, you know, I tried to assimilate so I could survive. I think it was a survival mechanism, nothing, nothing out of bad deed. But in doing that, like, I was just disconnected from my history and my tradition. And I really walked through my life from, the day I was born until like 23, pretty insecure and not understanding what I was capable of. Right. And the only thing that I knew about Black history was like the trauma, the deaths, the deprivation that was kind of talked about earlier. And it was when I started to learn that history that I started to really understand, like, what I'm capable of, And then just from a family perspective too, it was almost as if that same dynamic was reflective in like how I viewed my family. Like, I was only able to see that, like, we got high school dropouts, we got people who are on drugs, my grandfather, who I love to death, like, his last couple of years just were pretty bad. And that was the last memories I had from a long time. But when I started to like reevaluate and look for like what my family has accomplished, it actually transformed my understanding of myself. Like, instead of seeing my grandfather as basically like a Black homeless man before he died, or a man experiencing homelessness, and reevaluating my own family's Black history, I got reconnected to the fact that he was a Black entrepreneur with no high school degree, and he had 3 successful businesses, And because I only focused on the trauma that he experienced and I experienced at the end, I completely forgot about that, When I reevaluated like my family history and recognized the strengths that exist within my mother, the strengths that exist within my father, who, he did 24 years in prison. It could have been very easy for me to focus on the fact that he was just a Black man who was incarcerated, focus on the trauma. But when I reevaluated the skills that he has and the perseverance that he had to get out, get rehabilitated, and then teach me some lessons, it like made me recognize that all of those skills, all of that strength also exists in me. And like, y'all have known me for the past like 5 years now. And I bet you all y'all would say that I'm far more confident now than I probably have ever been. And the only reason that is because I started to acknowledge and recognize the Black history that exists within my family. And also the Black history that exists more broadly. So all that to say is I think it's critical to also not just think about like, the Kings and the Ella Bakers, the Carter G. Woodsons, but recognize the greats that exist within our own family and our proximity to us, and recognize that greatness is also in us.
I love that. And everybody on this call, I think from the first time I met you, I seen greatness in you. And I'm proud to be associated with you. And that's why and that's why we have our own, chat group outside of this conversation that we're making live to everybody today. And I called you for this conversation because, I want to see more of these spaces like this where we can engage in honest dialogue and elevate each other and see the greatness within each other. So thank you for just being the great people that you are and elevating the greatness in me. They say still sharpen steel. With that, any last words, gentlemen, before we head out with this discussion, which was fire, I must say. I can't wait for it to drop because I know a lot of people are going to appreciate it. But any last words, gentlemen?
I think one last comment that I'll make, and is piggybacking off of something that Eric just mentioned. I think how dope it is that, and I feel like the majority of us, I do believe, are 80s babies. And how interesting that is for us to be changing the narrative of how we view Black history. Because like when I have the conversations of Black history, like thinking of my own research, and then when I do it for my class and my courses, that's always like a Black space and a Black space in Black history. Drug epidemic messed us all up. My dad got into it and spent some time in prison because of it as well. So I know the narrative of coming from that era and knowing what the expectations of individuals are. So I think it's real dope that we are here, sort of redefining what that means to Black history in that way, because I think all of us are exceptional in what we do, and I think we're living that Black history because there are individuals who look up to each one of us and see I can do that. So I think when we talk about the vision and goal for the future, I want to see more of us in each one of the spaces that we occupy. And that's continuing to redefine what Black history means. But I think that was just dope as I was listening to what you said in your story, Eric. I resonated, a couple of those pieces resonated with me because of my background. And I think it's so easy for some of us to get bogged down in that. But that was just something that stuck out, how important it is for us as Black men born in the 80s to be able to redefine what Black history means for us.
My last word is, and this goes to the positive lens that Eric and Mike and Jordan spoke of in regards to just how we view ourselves, is that we consistently acknowledge generational trauma. The future needs to acknowledge generational blessings and the greatness that we pass on. So let's change our terminology. Let's change our lexicon around acknowledging just what went wrong, and also paying attention to the fact that we are the only group of people who could have gone through what we've gone through and still managed to be where we are now. And so it's not just generational trauma that we want to acknowledge, but
I love that. Love that.
Generational blessings.
So let's tap into our generational.
I'll just toss out super briefly to add on to it. Black folks are beautiful. We cook. We have a good time. We know, and not that we need to end on like a super happy. I think on that, I think we have a remarkable ability, even ourselves, we're all grappling with some real systemic injustice that are felt generationally, personally, in the moment, and also like we all have brilliant smile. Like we also know how to hold joy as well. We also know how to coexist in spaces where they might not want our bodies to exist, but we will find our ways to almost like fight back to the system by being like, I'm gonna find joy even in moments in societies and spaces where it might feel like my destruction is imminent. And I think from ancestral to in Eric's word, just carrying on that tradition of like faith and hope and joy, and just knowing that like every day is truly a gift for us to continue on that tradition of Black history and to build it on in ourselves, to do our cooking, do our hair how we do it, and everything like we do. So I think I love the Black culture, love Black folks, and let's keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I'm gonna rephrase what Ronald Preston Clark said, and I'm gonna put it like this for everybody who's listening, and especially if you Black. Being Black is a generational blessing. You are from a bloodline of kings, queens, resilient, extraordinary, magnificent, beautiful people. And we are who our ancestors prayed for in this moment. And we are going to change and keep rewriting history and keep creating a culture. So like Issa Rae said, I'm rooting for everybody that is Black. So stay Black, stay beautiful. Black every day, every month, as Mike Love's shirt saying. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a special edition with the fellas for Black History Month. Hopefully I'll get them in for another one. We'll see what you guys say. And that is it for this edition of Rise Urban Nation.